Okay, welcome everyone. We have a very special episode of Talking Away the Taboo here today. Today is October 8th, 2024, and this is a conversation that I think will be really important and I hope helpful for the I Was Supposed to Have a Baby community and the community at large in terms of how we deal with grief, how we deal with loss, how we deal with in the backdrop of everything that we're dealing with here as a Jewish community and as people who live in Israel. So I'm thrilled to be bringing on two really wonderful. Let me grab the other one, make sure she's here, Shani. Two really wonderful people who are really special in our world. Shirel, introduce yourself, say hi as I'm grabbing Shani.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. So thankful to be here. Thank you to everybody. I can formally introduce myself. My name is Shirel Korobkin. I live here in Israel, in northern Israel, and I have the great honor of being the support lead for English-speaking women here in Israel who are experiencing infertility and or pregnancy loss here for I Was Supposed to Have a Baby.
And Shirel's going to talk more about her work. I'm just waiting for Shani.
Absolutely.
Everybody just hold for a second. If you have any, we have a bunch of questions that we're going to be answering. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. Hi, Shani. How are you?
Hi.
You're here.
Hi.
There you are. Okay. Amazing. Um, Well, guys, we all know technology is sometimes really funny, right? So here we are, but I'm thrilled that this worked. Okay, so Shani, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Shani Weinmann. Hey, I am 27 years old. I live in Jerusalem, and I'm currently studying psychology, and I finished a bachelor's in dance, which is very exciting.
I was going to say, I feel like we need to have a whole other separate Insta Live about that, but we're going to stay focused here today. We're going to stay focused and stick to our topic. Our topic at hand today is really talking about fertility struggles in general against the backdrop of October 7th. I specifically chose the two of you, and there were actually others in our community who wanted to speak and were unable to, and I'll share a little bit more a little bit later. But because both of you have this unique perspective on living in Israel, obviously, and Shirel, you with your own fertility story, which I know you're going to get into, and also sitting at the helm of our support group there, and Shani having this pu- public sphere, let's call it, in terms of your pieces and writing about Miluim and writing about mikvah and also the miscarriage that you suffered in the last number of months. Let me actually, just to kind of set the tone for our conversation, if I can ask each of you, where were you on October 7th last year? And what has that been like, as you reflect back on where you were and sort of in the days and weeks and months afterwards? And maybe Shani, I'm going to come to you first.
So every year, my husband and I do a big minyan. We started a couple years ago in memory of his brother, who was killed in a terror attack almost 3 years ago by a boy by the name of Eli K. So we kind of were looking for a minion. Well, I was looking for a minion as a woman that would have something during the daytime for me too. And my husband, being the supportive guy he is, was like, "Yalla, like there's nothing here. Let's just make one." So we were in the middle of setting that up and servicing the community in that way when we were both called to Miluim in the middle. People started coming in with their phones and telling us, like, guys, like a war's broken out. We're both in Miluim, and we're like, okay, so let's go home. And so we checked our phones, and sure enough, we got called. So we both like immediately left each other and went our separate ways down south, to join up. And I don't know, we didn't know what was happening or what our job was going to be or if we're going to see each other again, but like it was all kind of a whirlwind of just okay, gotta go. Bye. See you sometime. And then also like the days that followed, like uncertainty, getting the gear, like all of that stuff that comes along with going to Miluim during a war.
Shani, can you just, for people who don't know what Miluim is, can you just give a little bit of an explanation?
Sure. I'm a reserve IDF soldier, which means I'm not currently in the IDF, but I get called up during routine to do guard duty, to do arrests, whatever the job. And I'm a combat soldier also, so that means whatever it means, usually guard duty. And then during a wartime is fighting or doing what I'm in search and rescue now. So doing search and rescue when rockets fall on buildings, getting people out. The job has a lot of different parts to it, but that's mostly what we do.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you have done and continue to do. And thank you for sharing. Shirel, can you take us back to that day?
Sure. Was home with my children, and we live right across from a highway. And we heard a very faint siren first thing in the morning, around, I want to say, 7 o'clock. And my rule of thumb is that if I can hear a siren, that means go into your mamad, go into your bomb shelter. I went in with my children. We weren't sure if maybe it was a test. It was very out of the blue. No one was expecting it. And this was the day of Simchat Torah. It was a holiday for us. I did not have access to my phone. I started after we had been in the bomb shelter for over 20 minutes. I started making my way with my children to our shul, to our synagogue, and I was approached by a religious woman that said, "Sweetheart, you need to go to your shul and tell everybody we are in the middle of a war. War has broken out in Israel." I proceeded to go to my shul. There was a lot of confusion. Nobody knew what was happening. There were some people who were aware of what was going on, at least in the South, just from having access to their phones or TV or neighbors that came over to tell them. So everybody made their way back home and everyone stayed home. We had police patrol going around our city, telling us to stay in our buildings, and we didn't realize the extent of what was going on until we saw people being called up, leaving in their cars to go and protect. The days following Simchat Torah, there was a lot of paranoia. Schools were canceled, kindergartens were canceled, many people stayed home. The area that I live in is surrounded by some fellow Arabs that we were not sure where we stood. We normally have very good relationships with them, but there was a lot of fear that there could have been an attack in the coming days.
It's very, it's a lot. I mean, and I will share also that the obviously I live in America. The mood in America was one that we're not discussing here, but speaking from the voice of a few people who had wanted to be here but weren't able to for personal reasons. There were people all over the country. One of whom I'm thinking about right now, who had literally had a miscarriage a few days prior, and was living in the South and was grieving, actively grieving this very wanted pregnancy, and then war broke out, and having to manage her own personal pain and all the other pieces that everyone is dealing with, and was dealing with and continues to deal with. And these are just three stories, and we know there are millions and millions of other stories. Shirel, let's now move, Shirel and Shani, but I'm going to come to Shirel first, to the experience that you have found over the last number of months. You are the head, as you mentioned, of our Israeli support group for people with general fertility issues, and English speaking Israelis, to be very clear. And so I'm curious, you know, you have this position because you have your own fertility story, which I'll let you share. But I'm curious if you can give us a window into what that group has been like over the last year, what people are struggling with, what people are holding, And I know you also, because of your work in grief and because of the work you do here at I Was Supposed to Have a Baby, you also privately counsel different people in the course of your life. So if you could just give us a window into what the last year has been.
Absolutely. So I Was Supposed to Have a Baby saw that especially post October 7th, that we needed to create a group specifically for the women here in Israel. Our group caters towards those who may be immigrants with an English speaking background, or those who were born and raised here in Israel but prefer to receive support in their mother tongue of English. What I'm seeing is it's the whole spectrum. I'm seeing a lot of people those who are experiencing infertility and let's say going in for IVF, they had to push off going in for treatments because all of their doctors and medical staff were called up to go to reserves, called up to go to Viluim, or they were in hospitals that were located either north or south that they felt were no longer safe as a safe option for them to travel to by public transportation or by car, just because there were terrorists running free on highways and we didn't know what was going on. Many people I'm seeing are struggling and grappling a lot with the validation of the personal grief that they're experiencing, their personal losses, and they feel that they can't talk about them in the wake of an post-October 7th world. How can I talk about my miscarriage? How can I talk about my infertility when my friend's husband was just killed in battle? Or I have a friend who one of their siblings was taken hostage, and there have been many, you can fill in the many scenarios that people feel judged and they will suppress their own pain and suppress their own grief because they don't feel that it's appropriate. I'll put air quotes for that, appropriate to express that grief. And we're seeing now the ramifications of that unexpressed grief is showing up in rage, in resentment, in depression, forms of PTSD that we're still trying to work with. We're seeing a lot of women who are struggling within their marriages. For those who have experienced pregnancy loss and or infertility, you know that it causes a strain on your marriage. They are trying to conceive, but their husband is not home because he's been drafted into reserves. And when he does come home, he's battling PTSD. He's emotionally and physically exhausted. And sometimes the woman or the wife's needs are not seen because she's been holding up the front in her own way, which is just as emotionally and physically draining. And it causes a lot of conflict between couples, and it's something we're not talking about. Those are the main areas that people in the group talk about. This is also from friends, family, people who I counsel. These are the main, I would say, these are the main themes that are coming up.
Okay, we're gonna get back to some of those pieces and delve in a little bit deeper, but yeah, I mean, it is obviously understandable with all of the different pieces. Look, just physically, even when you take people who can't have access to their doctors, access to medicine, access to their spouses, to their partners, I mean, it just creates chasms everywhere, everywhere. Um, okay. Um, Shani, can you give us a window into what this year has been like for you? I mean, you've written publicly about your experience with mikvah and miluim, being in reserves and trying to deal with the laws of family purity and trying to like going to the mikvah to make yourself pure, but what if your spouse is not there and what does that mean? And then about your miscarriage and all of the complex emotions that you had surrounding that. Can you give us a window into your life?
Yeah, I mean, I spent 4 months in reserve duty since the beginning of the war. I got out in about January, and I also had a tumultuous time during reserve duty. I'd had my period for 2 months straight. I'd also have PCOS, so that like, and coming off of birth control because the birth control was making me ill. So I had a bunch of all that stuff, and then also recently had found out that I have early ovarian aging. So the doctor was like, had just finished telling me, like, listen, I'm not telling you what to do, but I just want you to know that if you want to have your own children, your window might be quite short. And so that left me with a lot of things, and the war broke out and I didn't have time to think about that. I just had to go. And due to the stress and the not eating and all the things we were put through, I had my period for 2 months straight. So my body by the end of Millennium was in complete shambles. And also on top of that, like feeling like I need to go to the mikveh after all that, and going like, there is absolutely no point to this whole thing right now. I'm in war. I haven't showered in a week. I'm not well. I just like went through a 2-month period, which on your body is like insane. And then also going through reserve duty, and at the day-to-day of that was just, I was not well, and I had to go back. So I was like, should I do it? Should I not do it? I decided to do it. And in the article, I talk about, how mikveh has to be more than about the husband. Otherwise, there's really no point, which is kind of a lot of women, even ones who weren't in Miluim, even ones who weren't married, were relating to me because they're like, well, yeah, like, what do you do when none of our husbands are here? Like, what do we do? So I think it was like really important to find another meeting to it, or just to have some sort of normalcy, because I had just spent 4 months of non-normalcy. And then my husband and I went on vacation after we both got released. It was just like, we went away, we went to just decompress. We both were suffering, post-army symptoms of different experiences that we had. And I found myself after that I got pregnant, and it was like something that I wasn't really like fully prepared for, and I couldn't like really get my head around it. And I was also still suffering from like the after effects of everything that I'd just been through, only to discover like a couple months later that it wasn't gonna work out. And so, like, before I'd even had a chance to process everything that was happening, or like get my body back, or like heal, like it was going through another traumatic event. And it happened during Pesach time. And I thank my doctor for this, because he said, like, if you can do it naturally, do it naturally. I don't want to intervene, which I'm very, very grateful for, because even though it was very traumatic and very hard on my body, like, I would have been so much worse off if he hadn't told me that. So I did it at home, like, naturally. It was awful. It was excruciating. It was agonizing. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. It was the most awful pain I've ever been through. But at the end, I was able to like fully just release everything, and then start like a new healing process. And that was like my own personal thing, except for everything else that was going on in the country. Obviously, like you said, like, I'm going through my own stuff, but I just gave to my country, but now I have to go through my own stuff. And like, how do you balance those two things, and how do you keep your mental state well? Like, I've just gone through all of this thing and seen all this horror, and then I have to go here, and then I have to go through this more horror in my own life, and then I wasn't even ready for this pregnancy, but then it's gone. You didn't even have a chance to go, like, did I even want this? Like, what do I even feel about this? And then you have to move on to other things, because Milliam's happening again, or this is happening again, or school's happening again. So you just don't even have a chance to sit down and breathe for a second. So I think my year's been chaotic is the way to sum it up.
I, um, I mean, obviously, we both read your piece, and we knew about your miscarriage, about your loss. But I'm so sorry about all of it, all of the different circumstances surrounding it, and the just overlaying personal and communal and giving, and not knowing how to put it. I mean, I'm asking, how did you, and how are you getting through this? What have been the tools? What has been helpful? What has not been helpful? Have people been helpful? Who have you leaned on? Who have you not been able to lean on? Like, can you give us a window? I mean, so much of what we do is talking about people's pain and talking about people's experiences, so that people don't feel alone. And while obviously every person's story is unique, there is so much that each of us are carrying, and we're all dealing with different personal pieces. And so I always ask people, like, how are you doing it?
I think I mean, obviously that leaned like on my husband, and my parents were there also at the time of the miscarriage. That was actually really, it was like a very positive experience that I could have at a very awful time. Like it was really rewarding to have everyone around me going like, what do you need? What can I get? Like it was very much like this like bubble of just warmth and everyone supporting me. So I definitely felt like I came out as unscathed as you could possibly come out of that, even though you're gone through something. Um, but also, I think writing that article, I really think that was the catalyst for it, because I would never have heard everyone's stories if I hadn't wrote that article. So I felt like I had to give a little, and then I got like a whole bunch back. And I think that's like in general, like us talking about it, like if you give a little bit of your own self and be the one to say, you know what, I'm gonna break the ice, I'm gonna talk about it, you end up getting so much back, because people rallied around me and were like, oh my god, I can't believe you did that, and I can't believe you did that after reserve duty, and I can't believe you went to reserve duty, and this and that. Like it was just like very nice to have people like love on me so much. And I think it's also really important to acknowledge that your own pain and communal pain can tie together. Like it doesn't have to be, I don't feel like I have to balance the two of them. I feel like I carry other people's pain, and I also have my own pain, and you have to balance. Like, okay, today's a me day. Today we're gonna focus on my thing, and maybe tomorrow when I have more strength, I'll focus on someone else's thing. But today's not that day, and not feeling bad about it, not feeling guilty about it, because it's fine. You're doing okay. So I think that was also really important. Like, especially because I'm married to someone who also went through reserve duty, and we're both in our own like post trauma, whatever it is, and you're like trying to support each other, but you also have days where you're like, I can't give to you as much as you need today, and then the next day they give to you and you give to that. Like you have to balance that out to keep your relationship strong, and then also to keep your friendship strong and your relationships with your family strong. Like you need to balance those days, and it's okay to take those times for yourself also.
Oh my gosh, love that so much. And it's so like poignant and real, especially for all of us now in this collective pain, because it's not as if like I feel like in regular times, right? In war times, if someone goes through a miscarriage, right? God forbid, everyone else is fine. Okay, right. Everyone else has their own things, but they're fine. There isn't this like collectiveness that people are experiencing bichlal, like together. And yet here, okay, people might not be dealing with this private pain, but everybody is dealing with the other. And the fact that like holding both, like I love the way you really beautifully spoke about it, and also just like lived it, that holding both for you and for your spouse and for other people, like is something that there is capacity for. um
Yeah.
can you I tell can you say a little bit more just in terms of like, were there practical things that people did for you that were helpful?
um I would say just like normal things. Like I don't like to be coddled. Like I'm not such a touchy feely kind of person. So like I don't like the outpouring of the are you okay? Like that makes me super uncomfortable. So like people who know me are like, okay, let's go out. We're going out today. Let's go to the beach. Let's like treating me like I'm normal in a way, like made me feel whatever. So like friends inviting me to do stuff, or like, acknowledging that I'm still Shani even though I've gone through whatever I've gone through, and like just treating me like literally just inviting me to the beach or to go out for coffee or whatever. Like that stuff I have to say, and that maybe not for everyone, but for me that was so amazing to just feel normal in the midst of everything
Yeah,
else.
look, I mean, at the end of the day, we're still people, right? And I love the way that like your people knew what you needed, right? They
Yeah,
knew you didn't need the mushy gushy stuff. Like they knew you
yeah,
needed like
100%.
just to go
Yeah,
out. Like, yeah,
yeah,
I love it. I love
yeah.
it. Shirel, I'm gonna come back to you now. And, you know, in your I'm curious two things. One is personally, like if you could share also about your own personal story of grief, and I'm curious about whether that carrying your own personal pain has helped you or given you tools in terms of how to deal with the last year, and also how to deal with all the people who are coming to you and sharing their stories. And then just in general, how this has been for you personally also.
Absolutely. So my family, we made Aliyah from Toronto almost 4 years ago. And during the first year of our Aliyah, I got pregnant with our Aliyah baby. We were very excited. And at 26 weeks, I found out that my son was no longer living. I needed to deliver his body into this world. And I didn't have any access to medical or emotional support where I was living here in northern Israel. And it was the most excruciating pain that I ever experienced in my life. Because I was an immigrant, I didn't have friends or family really to rely on. And that's how I got connected to, I was supposed to have a baby. Fast forward now, it's been 3 years, and it has absolutely allowed me to connect with individuals who are experiencing any loss. It propelled me to actually pursue to get certified as a grief educator. And I now am able to empathize with people who not only who are going through pregnancy loss, but who are experiencing infertility, any form of loss. The definition of grief that I operate by is grief is any loss that you did not want. So definitely within my work, especially with everything going on, everybody is experiencing some loss on some level, whether that was, God forbid, through death, through illness, through they were supposed to have their big party, their big wedding, but because of the war, they were not able to. They were expecting to get pregnant, but their husband is not home. Whatever it may be, it allows me to be able to have the vocabulary to connect with them, and it gives me the emotional intelligence of how to just sit with people in their pain. People are very, I would say most people don't know how to do that. Most people were very uncomfortable by sitting with people in pain. And uh, it's been a gift. I know that's a heavy word to use for the most painful experience in my life, but it really has been a gift for me. It's something that my son Elon taught me, of being able to hold space for people in their most joyful times, but also being able to take my pain and convert it into purpose and meaning, and to be able to serve people in pain in their most painful times in life. What was your second question? Remind me.
No, just about the general experience that you have had, and in holding people, how you have been over the last year.
It's been a very hard year. I'm sure Shani can probably comment a little bit more on this, but when the war initially broke out, we thought that we were running a sprint as opposed to a marathon. So people were being drafted out. We thought it was maybe going to last a couple of weeks, tops a month or two. So we were running at full capacity. So I was offering my services of holding space for people in pain at an alarming rate than I normally would not have done. I didn't really pace myself because we thought it's going to be over soon, so we're okay. We can go at this rate. And then a month turned into 2 months, and then 3 and 4 and onwards. And we realized, myself and many of my community members, and I know this has happened to other people in this country, who realized this is going to take a lot longer than we thought, and we cannot operate at the capacity that we're operating out of, because we're just going to burn out, and we need to really take care of ourselves mentally too, because even though my husband was not a miluim, I still had the same fears that some of my friends have, that my husband is going to Tel Aviv for work and there's rockets going into Tel Aviv, or there's terrorist attacks happening in Tel Aviv. They're different, but the underlying paranoia, fears, they're the same. And it's been this year, it's been trying to find that balance of giving to my community, giving to my people, but also, as Shani says, and I'll echo this, is also taking space for yourself and saying, okay, today needs to be a me day so that I can heal, refuel in order to give back.
Do you, I, in both of you, sort of as we kind of like come to a closing here, like your advice, your thoughts, for people outside of Israel, like how can we help? How can we support you? How can we, like, also, like, how can we, like, who are also dealing with the personal and communal, we're dealing with it in different levels. We're obviously, our countries are not at war, but we're dealing with rising anti-Semitism, which is a different kind of war, so to speak, and managing different people's attitudes towards us. And yet we all also have personal pain. So I'm wondering if you could, each of you, kind of share your thoughts, like advice for the rest of us on how you've been managing and what your advice for us is. Maybe I'll come to you, Shirel.
Sure. I think it's really important for people who are experiencing, like you had mentioned, their own trials and tribulations, whatever that loss may be. It's so important to create space and time for yourself to share with your support people and to be really intentional about the content that you're taking in. We all are aware of the imagery and videos and audios that have been released on platforms such as Instagram and beyond, and we need to be very mindful of what we're taking in. That being said, I got to spend some time over the summer outside of Israel, and I saw the big divide from what I was experiencing here in Israel to what some of the people outside of Israel were just not thinking of. I really want to stress the people outside of Israel, you reaching out to, again, when you are in a emotional healthy place and you're in a position where you're able to give back to other people, reaching out to your friend or to your family or that counselor that you had in camp or from a birthright trip or a teacher you had from yeshiva or seminary, reaching out and saying, I don't necessarily have the words, but I just wanted to reach out and make sure that you're okay. Sending love from wherever you may be can go a really long way. Supporting Israeli businesses, we desperately need it, especially those located in the north and in the south, people who have been evacuated from their homes. If you're going to go shopping, maybe take 5 or 10% of whatever you just made your purchase on and donate it to many of the incredible organizations here who are on the front lines taking care of our people and protecting them. I would say, to me, those have been the most impactful ways of reestablishing or continuing to have that connection, even in times where you are in pain and you're having a hard time.
Beautiful. Shani, your thoughts. I don't know whether you still have family in Atlanta. I know that's where you're from. But what are your thoughts about people outside of Israel? How can we help? How can we manage our own personal and collective pain? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, actually recently I had the pleasure of being overseas. I was in Miami and Florida. And I've just told everyone, like, there, I tell all my friends, like, I think the biggest thing you can do for us, I know it sounds a little weird, like, be Jewish. Like, just be Jewish. I think Jews, especially growing up American Jews, we have a tendency to try to, I think we're seeing that tactic does not work.
Shani,
Fight our
I
battle
lost you
and your
for a
battle.
second. Your
Oh, okay.
connection, it's
Sure.
1 second. Your connection was a little bit off. Start again. You said be Jewish, and then I lost the rest of it.
Okay. Can you hear me
Yes,
now?
got
Okay.
it.
Sorry.
All good.
No, it's okay. So I was saying, just I told all my friends, like, just to be Jewish, and I said that I think Jews across the world have a tendency to minimize themselves and to try to, blend in as much as possible. And I think we've seen that doesn't really work. And none of us expect you to fight your battles and our battles, and you don't expect us to fight your battles and our battles. I think we both have different battles. with the same end goal, which is Jewish sovereignty, a land of our own, a land that everyone can come back to and be safe in. And I think the job of Jewry across the world is to be Jewish, be loud about it. It is a rich and diverse culture with an incredible history, incredible minhagim, whether you're religious or not religious, like you are part of this. For a society that is obsessed with culture and where you're from and what you're like, we are from Israel. We have this amazing culture, and to just be proud of it and to flaunt it and to wear your hair coverings or to wear your clothing and your signs, your Star of David, like you are Jewish, that's who you are, and don't apologize for it. Like that's the biggest thing that you can do to help us fight the war that we're fighting, which is the physical one, and you all are fighting a different war against people that don't want you to be who you are. So the biggest FU to them is be who you are.
Amazing. Amazing. And I'll sort of add my own spin, and both of you mentioned this throughout this discussion. We are all allowed to still carry our own personal pain in addition to the communal pain. And it doesn't, our communal pain that we are carrying does not invalidate what you are carrying on a daily basis. And each of you should reach out for support in whatever the area is, whether it's fertility struggle or any other struggle. There are people out there that are here to hold you. We are here to hold you as an organization, but everyone is here to hold you in all of the personal and all of the communal. Final words. I'll leave it open to each of you to just share any final thoughts, anything that's on your mind, knowing that there are people out there who are looking up to each of you, who really admire the two of you for being outspoken and supporting in each of your own ways, and for all the people out there in Israel also, some of whom wanted to be here, some of whom are listening in. Advice, thoughts, last words. Shani, I'm going to come to you.
I would just emphasize that pain has pain takes on a lot of different forms, and pain has a lot of different faces, and it's okay to acknowledge all of those, and they come out in very different ways, sometimes when you're not expecting it. And I think the more pain that I had suffered over the year, the more I had come to realize that because pain looks so different and it looks so different for everyone, that I need to do my part in just opening up myself a little bit. And so I know that's very hard, but like I said before, when you open up just that little bit, you end up getting so much more back. And noticing that there's this entire community of women who don't speak about having a miscarriage, an entire group of women reservists who have been kind of in the background of the media because it's not glamorous or whatever, whatever it is, that the more we open up and share with each other, the more we get back. And it's not as scary as you think it is, because someone 100% will tell you that they've been through the same thing or something similar, or share with you, and then it becomes less scary for everybody, and we create this better community of women who are able to support each other. So speak up, please.
Please. I love it. Beautiful. Shirel.
To heal it, we have to feel it. We are now experiencing, it's October 8th. We thought that things would look very different a year from now. And for many people, they might feel that it looks the same, that not much has changed, and they may feel that there's no hope. And I know, being on the receiving end of the services from I was supposed to have a baby, I remember what it was like to be in tremendous pain, thinking that there was no way that there could be any good or light that would come from my pain. For me, what keeps me going is being able to say, I was able to get through that most excruciating, painful experience of my life. And somehow I was able to take that pain and to, as Shani says, to share it with other people, to let others know that they're not alone. And now I have the the merit of being able to serve people in pain, so too, we know this with Jewish history, what we're experiencing right now, it will come to an end. And God forbid we're not looking to replace or to not acknowledge the pain that our community, the Jewish people, have been experiencing right now, but to know that yes, it is possible from pain and darkness, despair and anguish, that there can be light and there can be healing, and we once again can find joy together.
Amen. 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 Thank you both so much for your time, for your words, for your wisdom, for sharing. Um, we have to talk about it, right? We have to talk about the uncomfortable. We have to talk about the pain in order to let people know that they're not alone, and to, exactly as both of you said, to open ourselves up to bring people in and to envelop them and to really give them that support. So thank you, each of you. To all of you out there, this episode is being recorded. It'll live right here, and then it'll also live on our podcast sometime. It'll be up in the next week or so. If you want to reach out, we will tag both Shirel and Shani if you want to reach out to any of them and contact them further. I know each of them would love to chat with you if you want more support from them individually. Thank you so much, and we should all be able to see the light very, very soon.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Good night, everybody.
Right.